Welcome to the Purpose People podcast. Today we've got an amazing guest from a company called Goose Island. It's the CEO, Karen Hutchings. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Darrell. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, we're thrilled to have you on board. We've met maybe a couple of times, but I had a really good conversation with you Intrabiz in London a couple of weeks ago, and I was cheeky enough to say, hey, Karen, would you like to come on our podcast? And you amazingly said yes. So,
oh, no, I was delighted. It's my first podcast.
Oh, wow.
First podcast, yeah.
So we're honoured to have you on board. So awesome. Well, Karen, we talk about purpose and we talk about the journey that entrepreneurs, business owners have made, and your journey has been pretty amazing over the last 20 odd years. But going through your LinkedIn profile, doing a little bit of stalking and checking it out, it wasn't always that way. You were involved in finance, weren't you? And then you ended up in fashion. So do you want to just share a little bit about the backstory, and then we'll explore you, the brand, the community.
Okay. Well. Yeah, I was a financial consultant with a company called Ally Dunbar. I don't think they've been taken over so many times now. I think they're Zurich now. And I was self-employed and I was a sales consultant. And I did really well. In fact, so well, I could take a year off and go on a sabbatical, and they kept my job open for me. So whilst I was away, I went traveling with my ex-partner, not my husband, my ex before my husband. And we went to Southeast Asia, India, Australia. And I think it was while I was traveling, it inspired me to think of doing something else other than finance. And it was a year I was out, met loads of interesting people, did lots of different things. And even when I was traveling, even though I knew I had a job to go back to, I remember looking in Bali at the jewelry and the clothing and thinking, wow, I wish I was in this game because I could do so much with it. Anyway, long story short then, I eventually came back a year later, and I remember going into the office. And what did it for me? I saw a guy walk. I had so many stories to tell. I was so excited. And I remember this guy walking in the office, and he had a sheet of paper in his hand, and he looked over. He said, "Oh, hi, Karen," as if I'd been gone a week. And I thought, I've done all these amazing things, and he's still walking around in a grey suit with a piece of paper in his hand. And it was then that sparked it then for me, and I started looking for other avenues. And I think I stayed there about another 6 to 8 months working there. And I applied for a job as a sales rep in a fashion company. It's when they had manufacturing in Wales. They don't anymore, but it was working for a manufacturing company as their sales manager. So I got the job, worked there for 6 months, and my wages check bounced. It's almost like it was serendipitous, It bounced, and the owner of the company said, "Karen, we're struggling, we haven't been paid, blah, blah, blah. What I would do, take that rail of samples as your paycheck," he said, "because we're on zero in the bank account.
Wow, okay.
Take that." And that's what I did. So I had this rail of samples, no job, no paycheck. So I started doing house parties, clothing parties for friends and family. I had all the contacts of where to buy from in London. So I started going to London buying. And then I started doing events like, craft fairs, things like that. Yeah. And I thought, do you know what? I need to go back to Bali. I need to go there. That's where I'll if I want to do something different and stand out from everybody else. So I went out to Bali on my own. I had 1 or 2 contacts out there, but when you're going somewhere on your own, you make sure you're going to be met. And anyway, I had those 1 or 2 contacts I linked up with, and they arranged for me to stay in this hotel right up in the middle of Bali, in the middle of nowhere, in the jungle almost. And it was amazing. And anyway, I was there for 6 weeks, and I put a whole collection of clothing together, mostly children's at the time, which is unusual because we've come away from children's now. And I couldn't wait to get back and start selling it, and it just flew off. Well, not off the shelves. I didn't have any shelves. I had a couple of rails that I used to take.
But it was successful. You kind of like saw the evidence of the hard work and stuff pretty quickly.
Yes. And not long after that, then I was with my husband then, Peter, and he said, "Look, there's a chance of a shop." He was well connected. He knew people, and he said, "There's a shop available, blah, blah, blah. The next thing, I was opening a shop full of Balinese clothes and ladies' clothes and children's clothes. And then very shortly after, I opened a second shop, then a third, then a fourth, all in the space of, I'm going to say, about 18 months.
Wow.
But I was always doing something in the background to market those shops. For example, fashion shows in schools, because we had a range of children's clothes. So I think every day there'd be somebody working for me going somewhere to do a party or an event, or I used to do the fashion shows and be up on the stage and compare them. And during the summer, before the summer holidays, we would do 4 or 5 a week of these fashion shows. And that would bring people into the stores then. And it went from there. And what happened then, we closed one of the shops, then we opened another one, then we closed one. And it just went a bit like that. And Peter then got more involved. And we opened one shop and we just dedicated it to furniture and homeware and gifts. And it was a lovely shop. It was...
Where was it based?
It was in Swansea.
Okay.
And it was on the ground floor. That was all Balinese. It was like as if you were walking into Bali. It was amazing. And then upstairs, there were 5 rooms, all up above the other 2 stores next to us. So it was a bit like a TARDIS. And you'd walk in and there'd be like a Thai bedroom and then a Balinese living room and all. So we did it all like Bali, because we're very passionate about Bali, both Pete and myself. And we had an apartment out there. So we were importing furniture, and he came into the business then to look after that side of it, because his background was shipping and importing. And then we developed, the shop in Mumbles. We had a shop in Mumbles on 3 stories. So we decided to open that up to furniture upstairs. And we had a shop in Cardiff, and we decided to open that up to more furniture. And so we had 4 shops: Cardiff, Mumbles, Cowbridge, which we've had. In fact, it's our anniversary. Strangely enough, the 3rd of April we signed. We moved in 25 years ago, which is amazing. And it's still going strong. It's our flagship store. Cowbridge was the only store we didn't do furniture in. So from there, we used to import everything: jewellery, homeware, clothing, menswear. Actually, you asked me about menswear
we
earlier.
talked about that earlier.
We used to do like surfing shorts and stuff like that, because we needed boys wear for the fashion shows. So we'd always do like these big baggy oversized surfing t-shirts and shorts and things. I was in the store one day and seeing an agent who used to come to sell to me. I used to have a lot of agents who would come from the UK, and we'd top up the shops with other products that weren't Balinese then, products from the UK. And the shop was really busy, exceptionally busy, and everybody was buying our jewellery. And he said, well, Karen, where do you buy this jewellery from? Because it's such a lovely collection. And, obviously it's popular because every other woman is taking a piece of jewellery to the counter. So I said, I get it from Bali. So he said, if you put a collection together, I would sell this for you and showcase it when I'm going to see my huge customer base. So it got me thinking. Anyway, the next time Pete and I were in Bali, that's what I did. I put a collection of jewellery together to sell wholesale. But meanwhile, I was approached by a few other agents, and very shortly, word got around, and we had something like 5 agents, all with samples, all selling Goose Island jewellery. So Pete and I said, we need to do a trade show. We need to go and see what interest is there really. So we went to Harrogate. Didn't have a clue.
Harrogate.
Harrogate.
Oh no, my wife used to go to Harrogate.
Oh, did she?
Yeah. So we this is when the kids were tiny, but she was a teacher, and we had to go to Harrogate because Claire worked for AQA, which is the examining board.
Oh, right.
And the examining board, they would get all the teachers that are marking the marking. So someone that, GCSE exams and coursework, they would be marked, and then the AQA lot would remark them to see if they're on point. But the great thing about it is they always used to pay for a hotel to go to Harrogate.
Fab.
So Claire
Beautiful hotels.
So Claire used to go and do a Harrogate, and I just walk around Harrogate all day. I absolutely love the place.
And Betty's for afternoon tea.
That's it. Yeah. It's just beautiful. It's stunning, and then and I think the first couple of times I went to the cinema in the afternoon, and then we had the little ones. And I remember one year I had the youngest strapped to my front and the other one in the buggy. And I was just going all the way around Harrogate. You know, the dad looking after the 2 kids. But yeah, I love Harrogate. It's a great,
it's beautiful. Well, we just
place.
Thought if nobody buys anything, we'll have a nice couple of days in Harrogate.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, amazing.
So we were complete novices, but 2 of the agents said, look, we are there, we'll come and help you, we'll come onto the stand. Well, we were actually mobbed. It was unbelievable. We did really well, and we put the jewellery from Bali, but we also had started going to India to buy then.
Yeah.
And we put a collection from India, and we put some trinket boxes and some giftware as well, sparkly giftware. And it was amazing. We had such a good response. And then while we were there, we got talking to other traders, and they said, well, you should be doing, why don't you do the home and giftware show in the NEC, which is 3 weeks' time? And then there's another one in London, in Olympia. And before we knew it, we were booked onto all these trade shows. We thought we need to get a warehouse, because we came back from that first show and we thought, my God, what are we going to do? We were running it from our garage.
Wow.
We just stacked everything in our garage and we argued like mad. I remember we had an office in the house, and I said, we need to do something. We had QuickBooks then, and I quickly set up a wholesale account on QuickBooks.
Yeah.
Got all the products on there somehow, with Pete shouting at me the other side of the desk, what's this? We need codes, we were saying. Anyway, I can remember us now arguing like mad. We got it up and running. We managed to invoice them all, got the orders out, found a warehouse very quickly, and then recruited some staff. And it went from then. We got into the B2B side of the business then, which very quickly took over from the retail.
Wow.
And that's the biggest part of our business, the B2B. And that's grown now. And we've got over 2,000 customers all over the UK that buy from us B2B. And actually, some of those customers are the very same customers that came to us in Harrogate that first time.
Isn't that incredible? Yeah, because, I mean, that's the thing, you know, it seems like your growth journey has been quite, you know, it's like one thing and the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And I think you've got such a unique product. You know, it's not, my daughter, I shared earlier, is that she doesn't like buying stuff off the shelf in shops. She just can't find what she wants.
No.
So she'd rather go to the secondhand stores and find clothes there, and quirky clothes. And she'd buy there because she said, I don't want to look like everybody else.
Exactly.
You know, and I think what I haven't looked, you know, obviously looking at the clothes and stuff like that. So I said to our daughter, you've got to have a look. They are unique. They're funky. It's not something you see every day, but they're almost timeless as well. I know you have different collections and different seasons, but then again, they're timeless as a fashion item for them. So I think for me, I can see why people I like that, and began to buy it, and I see why there's a demand from the business to business side, because the clothes are unique. They're not the same that we see, and it's not like H&M or it's not River Island and you just keep going Bowden. There's almost this continual look, isn't there? So as you go up the brands, they all look similar, but what I like about yours is
they all copy each other.
Yeah, they all copy each other. It's like, and yet yours is very, very different, but it's obviously more luxe in the way it looks and it feels. And I just think, wow, you know, you stumbled across something by going to another country to bring something back to the UK. And I always say this in business, that businesses flourish and succeed when they go somewhere else and bring it in to an area that people aren't used to. And that's how you build a name for yourself. And that's what you guys have done in terms of...
Well, we import from Italy now.
Wow.
So we've changed from Bali to India to Italy.
Whereabouts in Italy?
Well, it's a place called Prato, which not many people know of. Okay. It's the textile centre of Italy, actually. Yeah. It's near Florence in Tuscany.
So do you stay in Florence?
Used to, when Pete used to come out with me. Yeah. We used to stay in Florence, but I go with my nephew. My nephew's quite involved in the business now. He's the MD, Carl. And we fly to Pisa and we stay in Montecatini or the outskirts of Prato. It's all very beautiful, but Prato itself is very industrial, and it's just like any other industrial area anywhere in Europe, actually. But just go a little bit out, and then you've got the Italian vibe. But it's still very Italian. We go for coffee in the day. Lunchtime we go to a cafe where it's all full of buyers, and they're all having their 4-course lunch. And Carl and I are just having a quick bowl of pasta. But yeah, it's lovely. I love Italy. Really passionate about Italy.
I love it. I mean, one of our greatest holidays we spent 10 days in Sicily as well, and I just love it. I just love the vibe. I love the culture. There is some Italian in our family as well.
Oh, is there?
Yeah. So my dad's mum is from an Italian family, so they're all northern Italy. There is that element to us. We got Irish and Italian in my side of the family, which is quite interesting.
Yeah,
would explain why my children are particularly loud. But for me, Italy and that whole stuff, obviously they got a name for great clothes. That's what they do. They do it well.
And that's why we chose Italy, I think, because India have got the beautiful fabrics and the embellishments and everything, but they're not up on the fashion. Whereas Italy are, they're a step ahead of everybody else. And that's why we sort of gravitated towards Italy. But we still do buy from India as well. And Bali. Okay. And one of the reasons we got into clothing in Bali, because we were primarily jewellery wholesale initially, but we had all these giftware shops buying from us. And then when we were in Italy, in Bali this one time, our agent out there at the time, she said, "Karen, why didn't you try these shrugs?" And they were just like a fine knit shrug. She said, "All my clients are buying them and they're doing really well with them." And I thought, we could try those. They'll sit alongside the jewellery. People, our stockists won't need a fitting room for anybody to try them on. They're flat packed, blah, blah, blah. Right, we'll try them. So we took them to the next trade show. And again, that was a game changer. It was a pivotal point in our business because we went from just being jewellery to all of a sudden clothing, and the orders went up tenfold because everybody wanted these shrugs. They were a great seller. We had something like 60 different colours. It was amazing. And then we started to supply a multiple called I don't know if I should say they're not going anymore, but Calico. And then we supplied another company called Anne Harvey, plus size. And then we supplied Minuet Petite, which was petite size. And all of a sudden we're supplying all these multiples throughout the UK.
Wow.
And then we realised it was clothing that we needed to. We sort of gravitated more into clothing then.
So interesting, because you got the shops that you had in retail, and then you obviously saw things explode with, the whole business to business side of things. But then you almost, was it a necessity thing, or it's just an evolution where you actually then went online, and then there's a whole rapid hockey stick type journey to that.
Unbelievable.
When did you get online for the first time, and then when did it all begin to change?
Well, we've always been online, but never really taken it seriously, to be honest. We ran the online shop from our Cowbridge store, and it was just, it just ticked over. We were online because we knew we needed a website. Every business has to have a website. And it was just to have a presence online. And to be honest, if we sold 30 items a month, that was it. It was nothing. It was never profitable. And every time I sat down in our business meetings, our finance meetings, it would always be, I was always saying, I'd like to take the online further. And I'd be up against Carl, who's my nephew, who's the MD, Peter, my husband, who was co-director, chairman, and Emma, who was the finance manager. And they'd say, Karen, it's 1% of the business. We're not even going to go there. And I was always fighting against them for the online, always wanted to do it.
Was that because it was a gut thing? What,
I just knew there was a potential audience. It's global, yes. And I used to say to them, we need to market it. But they said, we haven't got the budget to market it. All the budget was being thrown into the B2B, doing trade shows and everything. So our budget was something like £20 a month to boost one post on Facebook. And that's all we had at the time to that's all they would give me, maybe a little bit more. We always employed an outside marketing company. And we used to pay them a small retainer, and they would do Google and a little bit of Facebook and write some blogs for us and things like that. So we always had that ticking along, but we never really took it seriously. I think it was lockdown really is when
things changed.
It changed, and it was the beginning of lockdown. We had 3 shops at the time, and of course the warehouse, the B2B warehouse, and it was 23rd of March that we locked down, and I remember it significantly because my father passed away on that day. So it was a heck of a shock for us. And anyway, after about 4 or 5 weeks then of being home and looking after my mum and whatnot, I think the entrepreneur in me then felt, I've got to do something. I can't just sit at home. This is ridiculous. I had my laptop and I was sending emails out because we had quite a nice database. So I'd be sending emails out. So I went down to Mumbles store because I live in Mumbles, opened up the shop. It was really weird because it was like a ghost town. Everything was closed and I was in this empty shop. And I just started doing selfies, really, trying the clothes on, doing selfies and posting them on Facebook. And all of a sudden we started getting sales.
Wow.
And within, I'm going to say, a month of me being active, taking selfies, taking little videos, and then publishing these selfie awful photos, and I think back, on the website, because those are the only photos we had, or hanging them up on a door in the shop and then posting them on the website, so we had products online. The sales started coming in. So we had a young boy working for us, an apprentice. He wasn't on furlough, so he could go in and pack the orders for us. And we were getting about 20 orders a day then, instead of 20 a month, maybe more. And
There's a shift. And what I like what you said, what I love what you said is that you look back now and go, oh, well, they weren't so great or whatever. But I think that's often what happens. We want, particularly with a fashion brand, we want everything to be absolutely perfect. And I'm sure it's got there now where the photos look stunning and, I've looked at them and they're great. But it was almost like, well, it's not perfect, but we just need to move. We just need to get going. So it's like, where people say, don't make it perfect, make progress.
Yes.
And I like about what you did there is that you began to say, look, it might not be but we need to do this, and we need to make progress. And it's like us with the whole podcast thing. We set it up. It's changed the way we set up and we're getting better and better at it. But the point of it is, we might look back in 2 years, 3 years time and go, oh, that's a bit wrong here, a bit right. But the point is just start. And for the listeners and people like that, just to encourage them is that don't get obsessed with perfection. Just start, because essentially, knowing your story, it's created not 1% of your income now. It's quite a big part of what you do now. A huge part. Just by taking that risk and doing it. So you've got this intern taking your pictures and posting them online and yourself, which is effectively changing the business.
And then we started... I took on then a graduate as well. And so obviously she wasn't on furlough. So she could go in and help with, she's a marketing graduate, fashion marketing. So she helped then by, again, taking photographs and writing copy for the website. And then we started doing these Facebook Lives. And when I think back to the early days when we started doing them, and lockdown was coming out then, we were coming into the June, July, people were getting back into work. So we started doing these lives. We all had bad hair days because there were no hairdressers open.
Loads of those.
And what we were doing then, we'd just literally stand in front of the camera and say, well, we've got this, we've got that, this has just come in. And I think back, they are toe-curlingly so bad.
Yeah, but you were doing them. And I think so many times there's people that go, oh, you need to do this on Facebook, because I talk about Reels, because they're a good thing now as well. Oh, yeah, but I haven't. I said, don't worry about them.
Just do it, because
Facebook almost doesn't care what you're doing. It's just content. And if you get content up there, it goes. And
absolutely.
And what you see is not what other people see as well.
Yeah, exactly. So that was the July, and then we started doing these lives about once a fortnight, and we could see the rise in the sales after doing the lives, because people weren't going out to stores then. They were nervous. So we could show them what the garments look like on a person, because we sell one size clothing from Italy. It's almost like not a virtual changing room, but there we are, standing in front of the camera saying, okay, this will fit a size 10, but it also fits a size 16 if you style it this particular way by wearing a belt, or open the buttons, wear it as a jacket, and that sort of thing.
But that's great, because like on a website or whatever, you can only see it almost like one or maybe a couple, but you're actually seeing it in physical form.
And
it makes a
walking
big
around.
difference. Yeah.
So we did that. That was July, August. We were rubbish at it, but the sales started to dip a little bit then, and people were getting nervous, and I think a lot of people were going online then doing these videos as well, and shops were opening, so they started to dip a little bit. And then I went to Italy with Pete, my husband, and Carl, my nephew, in the September, and we went. That was the first trip to Italy that year, actually. Yeah. Because we couldn't go there, we couldn't travel, but we were getting loads of samples sent by our suppliers in Italy. So I can remember doing a live from it. The intern that we took on, she was going to do a live from one of the shops, and I was managing it from Italy, and I was saying, right, take this, do this, blah, blah, blah. I was really nervous about it. How is she going to be? And she was just about to do it, and the girl in the shop fell over and cut her hand, and they had to get an ambulance. So I had to go live then in Italy and say, unfortunately, this live is not going ahead. I'm out in Italy buying, blah, blah, blah. And I think I can remember seeing Peter on the other side of the camera, laughing and telling me stop and going like this, cat, because I was going a bit graphically, but the girl fell over. Anyway, that was that. The live didn't go ahead, but I actually stood in front of a camera on my own and chatted. And that was the first time. And Pete was there and Carl was filming me. So we came back from Italy, and 3 days later, that's when my life completely changed forever, I'm going to say. And you know what I'm going to say? Yeah. I don't know if I can say it, actually.
Of course you can.
I don't know how I can say it.
Well, there was change, big change in your life.
So it was the first night I ever went out socially in that year after lockdown with a friend. I'd been out with Pete all day. We'd been for coffee. We'd taken my mum for coffee. We'd been to our Cowbridge store. He dropped me off at my friend's for supper that night, and he said, "Have a lovely evening." Yeah. And when I came home that evening, he had a heart attack. And I had to give CPR, but he never pulled through. And he passed away. So that was pretty tough. Yeah. And
in that process, one of the things you told me was that as difficult as it was the community around you that kind of got you through, and you had obviously to go through what must have been the most horrendous of times. It was
horrendous because, the first, weirdly enough, when you've got the police there, the paramedics, everybody, some family came, a friend came. I said, what about the business? Because he was such a huge part of the business. That's one of the things that went through my head. When you're in that situation, you're in panic mode. Anyway, the next day, the business was the last thing on my mind, and the following week, and the week after, and the week after, and the week after that. And Carl, amazingly, then tried to, I say tried, but he did. He stepped into Pete's shoes, and it had to keep going. We had orders to fulfill, and we had staff, and it was a living, breathing business. You can't just leave it. And then all of a sudden in Wales, we had lockdown again. So I'm locked at home
Wow.
Having just lost my husband, not having been able to have any visitors, not being able to go into work or anything. And then Christmas came. It was just before Christmas when we could sort of venture back out before the big lockdown again. Yeah. And I had my first meeting, and it was with a fashion influencer, and I knew her, and that was an easy meeting, and that was my first venture into work. And then shortly after that, then it was complete lockdown. But again, I couldn't let the business, I just couldn't stay at home. I couldn't. So I kept no, we didn't keep the lives going. What did we do? It must have been a couple of months into lockdown where I started going into work, and I went on my first live, and nobody knew. The audience didn't know at that time. And we had a smallish audience then, but they were a loyal audience. They didn't know who I was, what had happened. They just knew I was Karen working for Goose Island, showing some clothes. Yeah. So what I knew I had to do was show up and be happy, smiley. I couldn't be some miserable person on there. We have a business to run, and I had clothes to show and ladies that wanted to see them. So I went on, and I was quite upbeat. And for me, what it did was lifted me. It really lifted me, because I knew that I had to be happy, because I knew there'd be a lot of people watching. So it sort of raised my vibration then, planning for it, going on it, and then seeing all the wonderful comments afterwards. So we started doing these lives once a week, and we were socially distanced. It was bizarre when you think about it. We were 2 meters apart.
That's crazy.
I know, on video. We'd done tests and God knows what, so we knew that everything was fine. So I'd go in to do these lives, and then this enormous outpouring of support for us, that we were there showing these clothes for these ladies who were stuck at home and couldn't get out. And they absolutely loved it, but they still didn't know
what was going on behind the scenes.
My story at this point. And it took, we were doing a photo shoot, and for the photo shoot, we had 2 models, the photographer and our team, which was just myself and Georgia. So we were all not only masked up, we had shields on as well, and we were all socially distanced. It was the most weird photo shoot we've ever done. But we said to the ladies, look, it'd be nice if you saw a little bit behind the scenes and how we do photo shoots. We're going to invite you onto this photo shoot. Now, one of the models was actually Peter's nurse, because Pete was ill before he had the heart attack. He was fine before the heart attack. We were in Italy 3 days before. But 18 months before this, and I don't think my listeners know this actually, he had a terrible burn on his leg, which turned to sepsis, which ultimately led to his leg being amputated. And he was in a wheelchair, so I looked after him and everything. So you wouldn't know, he had a prosthetic leg, and so I had all that to go through as well. So one of the nurses that looked after him and came to the house to change dressings and things, I remember Pete saying she'd make an amazing model. So long story short, she came on board as a model.
Wow, cool.
So we were doing this photo shoot, and the idea was that I would introduce a model and talk about what she was wearing. Then she'd go off and Georgia would introduce. So on the second introduction, it was Catherine, who was Pete's nurse. And it was at this point I knew I had to say who she was and why. And I said, this is Catherine. Catherine looked after my husband, and my husband passed away 5 months ago. Catherine was welling up. The photographer was welling up, great, because he's a big part of Goose Island. The staff were welling up. I was crying, and it's the first time I broke down really in front of the camera with a shield on as well. And it was a very emotional live. But I had broken the ice, and I told them
what had been going on,
what had happened. And from then, that was another pivotal moment, because I realised then these ladies weren't just customers, they were like friends then. They were like, they felt that I was more of a real person. I wasn't just Karen working for Goose Island. I was a real person with emotions who had been through something horrendous and carried on through the worst thing in the world happening for me. First of all, my dad, then my husband, and a week after my husband, my dog actually passed away as well.
Wow.
A week after. So they saw, I had then a lot of personal messages, emails saying, Karen, you know, we really admire you for what you're doing. Thank you for showing up. I watch this program show, they call it, even every week. And it helps me through a bad time that I've been through, because I've lost somebody close to me. And then all of a sudden I had all these ladies that had gone through something similar that could relate to me.
Yeah.
It sort of helped them then.
And I think that's why I said what I did, because obviously at that moment you're around your family and getting through it. But I think it was, well, what does life look like afterwards? And I'd say this is that strong brands have a community around them. And I think you being vulnerable and you being authentic about everything's not perfect and you go through stuff, I think really cemented you in the hearts and the minds of the people that you're serving. Because I felt that when you told me your story prior to this, it was almost like it wasn't about selling for you, it was about serving them. How do I serve this audience? So you're going through a real horrendous time and you're thinking, how do I serve them? I've got to keep going. It wasn't about, I've got to keep going because I've got to make money. It was, I've got to keep going because I want to serve my audience.
Yes.
And for me, that's why I was like, I've got to get you on the podcast, because the brands and the real businesses and are focused on, how do I help? How do I serve? What impact can I make? And I think your brand now has made more of an impact with the result of you being open and honest and vulnerable, rather than the photography and all the other stuff that goes with it. And I think
it's unbelievable.
It's
honestly, Darrell,
incredible.
It's unbelievable. And I'll give you an example. When the first time I went out after lockdown, and the first time I'd gone out after losing Pete, was in the July then, and I was invited to a friend's 60th birthday, and I shared this on the live, which I do. I shared all my story. I wasn't doing much, only coming in and doing the lives. But live. Any little thing that happened, I would share with them. Like my mum had gone into hospital, I shared that anyway, and I said, I've got something coming up which I'm really not looking forward to. It's a very good friend. It's a 60th birthday. It's going to be full of couples. All our friends are going to be there. And I haven't seen any of these people since before losing Pete, because there were no funerals. We only were allowed 20 people in the funeral. Yeah. And that was including the undertakers as well. It was live streamed, but I hadn't seen these people physically because I hadn't been out. So I mentioned this, and I had loads and loads of support for it. And coming up to the day of me actually going out, it was a Saturday night, and I did the live on a Friday. And somebody said, Karen, what are you going to wear to the party tomorrow? And then we start a conversation. And it's always at the end of the live, we have this little sort of chill out chat. Yeah. And I said, I'm actually really nervous about it. I've got butterflies thinking about walking in that room. I was going with a girlfriend, walking in that room and seeing everybody. And somebody posted, I don't know who it was, but said, Karen, you won't be on your own. You won't be on your own that night. And say there was about 900, I'm just going to pick a figure from mid-air, say it was 924 people were actually watching live then. Yeah. She said, you won't be walking in that room alone. You'll have 924. Honestly, it really chokes me up. Yeah. 924 ladies that would be right behind you and right alongside you every step of the way, walking into that room with you. How amazing is that?
It's incredible. And for me, that's what you've built. You know, that's the legacy of Peter, and it's a legacy of yourself, to be able to carry on doing life through what is probably the worst thing you could possibly go through. Yeah. You know, yeah. I've not been there, you know, I don't know how you got through it, to be honest. And we're speaking to you now and what else, you know, you're doing your thing, and I'm sure there's times where it still feels horrendous.
It does, yeah.
But you're an inspirational character. You're an inspirational character because you've got people around you as well that you're saying, I've got this community, and it's been great.
I've got a lovely team. We, you know, since, excuse me, since starting the lives and the online, I did say it had gone up 10 times. It's gone up another 10 times since then. It's 20 times what we were initially selling. So, you know, we would be doing 20 orders a month. We're now doing, 100 to 200 orders a day, maybe, sometimes more on busy days. Yeah. So we've got a whole team now that we've employed. pickers, packers, dispatchers, customer service.
Wow.
The marketing company that we were dealing with, he's come on board and he's working as a manager to manage the team. So we've created jobs. We've moved to a bigger warehouse. The knock-on effect, the models, the photographer, van drivers, all sorts. You know, it's created a lot of jobs too.
And someone might have already put you under pressure for this, but I think you need to write a book. You know, I had a friend of mine, I'm only doing this because a friend of mine said that I was on a Clubhouse meeting and I was talking just generally, and they said, you need to write a book. And my friend is very much like, do it now.
You've written one, I heard on the podcast. I can't wait to read it. I'm going to download
I've written a book.
it.
I've got a copy for you. You can have it afterwards.
Thank you.
But the point was, I never thought I could write it, and I never thought I had too much to say. And it took someone to say, yes, you have, you need to do it, to get me to do it. And I'll give you the formula afterwards because someone gave me the formula that really helped me write it. And even my English teacher never thought I'd write anything. And people have got benefit as a result. And I think for me, with not maybe the crisis in terms of like you have been through, but I recognize that people go through crisis, and you've been through some crazy crises where every time it's happened, you've sort of like pivoted or adjusted and kept going. My book, you actually personify that book by having a crisis and turning it into a catalyst. And for me, it's like, you need to write a book. I'm not saying you can call it the crisis catalyst, but you need to write a book, because I think as much as people are getting used to you on the lives, they're getting used to you maybe on the podcast now, there's a story to be told about your life and about the stuff. And I think you've got lots of principles that you've probably never voiced, but as you write, they will come to the fore. And I think, you've got a buying audience, your community, whatever, but I think there's a lot more people that need to hear, how can you keep going through some crazy tough times, especially, you know, losing a husband, fashion branding, retail, closing it down. I mean, it's just, it's an incredible story, but you're still here, and, you know, you're happy, you're smiling, you're jolly, you know, you engage. And so for me, you know, you need to write a book. So you're being held accountable online with everyone here to write a book. Does that sound challenging? It
does. I don't know if I've got the time.
But if I give you the formula, what's good about it is once you got the formula, it's easy to, because I was the same. I don't know if I got the time. I need to shut myself away for 2 weeks somewhere.
Yeah.
You don't need to do it. It's like you just pick your moments and just build over a period of time. But I'll show you.
Okay.
When we're out in the car park, I'll give you the formula, and then we'll have you back to promote it at some point.
Okay.
Yeah. Does that sound good?
Yeah.
So obviously, where can people get in touch with you, get onto your website, or even follow you on Facebook or whatever?
I would say Facebook or Instagram is the first place.
Yeah.
Follow our lives. There's a huge community of ladies. We've got a closed group as well of 3,000 ladies that have fantastic support with each other, and help and support and give guidance on sizes as well. They do our job for us. But Facebook, follow us on Facebook and or Instagram, and we're now going on to TikTok as well. But Facebook is our biggest audience, but our website, and of course we still got 2 stores, Mumbles and Cowbridge.
Cool. And then just to close, what next for Goose Island? What's next in the grand scheme of things? You got any plans, future?
I feel now that I've got such a strong team. I'm almost redundant when I go into the office. When I go in, everything's done. So I'm going to spend more time doing things like this, the podcasts, and other things, other projects I've got on the go I can't talk about here.
Yeah, fine, okay.
And perhaps showcase a bit more of me, really.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I think the world needs to hear it. That's all what I say. The world needs to hear some of your story because
thank you.
Because you know you've been through incredible hardship and tough times, but you kept going, and you've got an amazing brand. You've got amazing people around you. So thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to be on our podcast.
I've enjoyed it. Thank you for inviting me.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hey, everybody. Thank you for listening to the Purpose People podcast. We'd love you to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, but also follow us on Apple, Spotify, Google, and Amazon podcast platforms. A review is really helpful for us to get the message so you can make purpose a priority.